Dad said, "You're not going to college," and gave my future away to my brother. But 6 months later, they were begging me to come back. I worked my whole life for it, my college fund, my dream. But when I finally held that letter, my dad said, "You're not going." And then he gave my future away to my brother. What did I do? I left. But 6 months later, they were begging me to come back. This is my story of survival. It wasn't a spectacular shouting match as in movies on the day I found out. No, the fact that it was silent, chilly, and almost informal made it worse. I recall the fragrance of Dad's coffee burning on the warmer as I stood in our living room, the air stale from the summer heat. I was holding the acceptance letter from my ideal college and smiling foolishly. This was the result of 4 years of avoiding trouble, working weekends to keep busy, and persevering through school. Mom's eyes seldom left her crossword puzzle. Dad didn't even get out of his chair. After taking a sip of his coffee, he simply stated, "Yeah, about that. You're not going." Initially, I chuckled. I assumed he was joking, perhaps a horrible joke. There was a college fund, he and Mom had always said. They had made the same vow every birthday, report card ceremony, and awkward family meal since I was 12. "You work hard, son, and we'll make sure you get to college." I put a lot of effort into my work. While others avoided difficulty, I kept out of trouble. I told myself that the reward would come if I kept my head down, so I declined parties and skipped vacations. And now I just got a shrug as I stared at them with my letter quivering a little in my hands. Dad responded, "It's all gone. We gave it to James." James? My younger brother James? James who had never passed a class without cheating? James who wrecked 2 cars by the time he turned 17? James who could charm the socks off anyone for long enough to avoid real consequences? My lips opened, but I was unable to speak. Rather than breaking my heart, Dad stretched and sat back in his chair as if he had just concluded a long day of work. His words, "He deserves it more. He's got potential. He just needs a little help to get serious. You'll figure something out." After everything, I wish I could say I screamed, fought, and demanded to know how they could do this to me, but I didn't. As I stood there, I felt my heart slowly shatter as I realized that all of those years of sacrifice had been pointless and invisible to them. Without saying another word, I made my way upstairs, each step getting heavier. I located my old duffel bag, which I had used for middle school soccer tournaments, and filled it with my battered laptop, a few changes of clothes, and the small amount of money I had accumulated from my after-school jobs. Nobody made an attempt to stop me. Mother didn't look up. Dad remained in his seat. James must have been out someplace enjoying his new life with my future. I realized I had no idea where I was heading when I stepped out onto the porch, the cicadas buzzing loudly in the humid air. It didn't matter though, I was confident of one thing, I would never return. That first night, I spent the night in my car. There was no plan. There was really no strategy, just a numb autopilot version of me driving around in circles till the gas light on my ancient Civic flickered on. I felt smaller than ever when I pulled into a Walmart parking lot, reclined the seat back, and gazed at the cracked roof fabric. I kept thinking in the back of my mind that maybe Dad would at least text, maybe Mom would call, or something. However, my phone remained dark. Not a single message, no missed calls. The days that followed were a lengthy stretch of job boards, tinned soup, and sleeping with one hand on the door lock. I got gas money by pawning my old Xbox. I earned money under the table by dusting dusty warehouses and hauling furniture from moving companies, taking up day labor wherever I could. It seemed like everyone could smell my desperation wherever I went. Nevertheless, a small flame within me refused to extinguish. I couldn't get Dad's statement that James deserved it more out of my head. And it sparked something instead of giving up. A silent rage. Not the kind that induces wall punching, the type that requires you to construct something with your own hands as a sign of your existence. I discovered a flyer stuck to a dilapidated coffee shop's window. Space for rent. Cheap. No questions asked. It was a shoebox hidden behind a dilapidated strip mall, hardly larger than a storage locker. However, it had a roof, 4 walls, and a phone charging plug. When I mentioned that I didn't have the first and last month's rent yet, the landlord, a stern woman named Connie, didn't even bat an eye. All she said was, "You hustle, you stay." So I hurried. I worked whatever jobs I could find during the day and drew ideas on scraps of paper at night so I could create something that no one could take away from me. I had nothing left to lose, hands that could work, and a mind that would not give up, even though I didn't have a college degree. I began selling reconditioned furniture, which I cleaned, painted, and listed online. People purchased them, sometimes quickly, sometimes for more than I dared dream, but it wasn't glamorous. I was still subsisting on ramen and peanut butter from the dollar store, but gradually, hope started to stave off the gloom. And I said nothing about it. No calls home, no social media posts, and no contacting anyone who could have questions I wasn't prepared to respond to. In order to prevent anyone from stomping it out before it had a chance to breathe, I intended to nurture this monster in the dark. James was already in the news a few states away, but not in a positive way. It started out as whispers. I received a message from a neighbor in my former town that said, "Hey, your brother got in some trouble at school." The title of a local news report that appeared on my cracked screen read, "College freshman suspended after fraternity vandalism incident." With my heart racing, I clicked on, and there he was. James, in a grainy picture, smiling foolishly in front of a ruined student lounge, spray paint can still hanging from his hand. The boy who was more deserving. I didn't grin. I refrained from boasting. I just shut down the article, switched off my phone, and resumed my job. Because I realized at that point that they had placed all of their money on the wrong son. And they were about to discover it. 6 months to the day after my departure, it took place. At first, I was completely unaware of it. With my headphones on and the smell of varnish strong, I began sanding down an antique coffee table. As usual these days, I had my phone buried in my backpack, forgotten for hours at a time. However, I saw missed calls when I eventually took it out to see the time. 1, 2, 8, and finally 1. All from Mom, Dad, and even James, the same folks who had witnessed me leave without saying goodbye. I spent a long minute looking at the screen. A part of me wanted to throw the phone down a storm drain, block the numbers completely, and act as though they didn't exist. However, curiosity prevailed. I opened the most recent voicemail. Mom's voice, little and tremulous. "Sweetheart, we need to talk, please. Things are bad. Just call us back, okay? We miss you. We miss you." It seemed as though she was speaking a different language because of the unfamiliar vocabulary. I listened to the following message while reclined on the concrete floor of my small shop, which I had constructed piece by piece with my own 2 hands. "Dad, rough and clumsy. Listen, son, it's time we, put the past behind us. Your brother's had a rough patch. The family needs you. The family needs you." If it weren't so pitiful, it was almost humorous. As I continued to browse, I came upon James, who was the most desperate of all. "Bro, I screwed up. Okay, I know you're mad, but can you just come home for a little while, please? Mom's freaking out. Dad's losing it. We need you, man." The boy who was more deserving. The pleading golden child. I didn't return the call. I didn't send a text. Rather, I polished every item of furniture I had prepared for the market that weekend. Humming along to the soothing music in my earbuds, I remained up till midnight. No recollection of home had ever been as reassuring as the steady scratch of sandpaper across wood. Out of habit, I accessed Instagram the following morning. And there it was. James's face appeared once more, but this time without a smile, on the local news page for my hometown. Former student expelled after financial scandal, police investigating. What I instinctively knew was clarified by the article. James spiraled after being suspended. Bad decisions were made one after the other. Fake GoFundMe pages were created and made public, and student loans were blown on parties. He believed that his friends would cover for him, but they turned him in instead. The last illusions my parents held onto had vanished along with the Golden Boys' empire. They now required a new rescuer. And they somehow believed it could still be me after everything, after taking my future and giving it to someone who set it on fire. The irony is that I no longer felt angry at all. Simply free. They were attempting to contact a non-existent person. The silent backup plan, the safety net, the faithful son. 6 months ago, that person vanished after packing an old duffel bag, and he would never return. I took my time responding. Actually, I didn't respond at all. Not initially. The calls continued to come in the days that followed. Mom changed strategies, sending lengthy texts that were chock full of old photos from Christmas mornings, birthday celebrations, and trips where we all wore matching t-shirts. Like what they'd done might be undone by nostalgia alone. Dad was less tactful and left a string of angry voicemails. "After everything we sacrificed for you, your brothers, and your blood, how dare you disregard your own family?" James even attempted to prove guilt. "Come on, man, you can't just leave us like this, you're better than that." Better than what? Superior to a family that only knew my name when they were in danger? They built a chasm and tossed a rope across it with each message, hoping I would be desperate enough to take hold. However, I no longer felt desperate. I was doing well. My small furniture company wasn't that small by then. I had recurring clients. Every week, additional orders had been brought in by a story in the local daily. People genuinely admired me for what I created, not for what I could do for them. Just myself, no safety net, no freebies, no college fund. My stomach turned at the idea of returning to that place and sitting at the same shabby kitchen table where Dad had previously assured me I wouldn't be leaving anyhow. I wasn't upset. I wasn't resentful. I was finished. I finally took a call one evening, but it was only to shut the door, not to argue or explain. Mom's voice was brimming with optimism. "Honey, oh thank God. We've been so worried. We just want to talk, that's all. Maybe you can come by this weekend." I awaited her completion. Then I spoke in a quiet, low voice. "No." The line crackled into a piercing quiet. Mom made an effort to become better. "What? What do you mean, no?" When I said, "I'm not coming back. Not for a visit, not for a talk. Not for anything. Sweetheart, please. We're family." I grinned, but not in a nice way. "No, you were a family when it was convenient. Now you're just people I used to know." I didn't flinch when I heard her choke on a sob. "You made your choice when you gave my future away like spare change," I replied. "And now I'm making mine." I hung up the phone before she could answer, before the tears, apologies, and promises could start streaming down her face. After a moment of staring at the screen, I switched the phone off. Like severing the final strand of a life that had been trailing behind me like a broken kite, it felt lighter in my hand. I stepped out onto my small, rented shop-turned-home's porch. The sky was streaked with scarlet and gold as the sun was sinking. The quiet buzz of traffic and the scent of freshly cut lumber filled the warm air. The scent was one of liberation. I stood for a long time, absorbing everything. The boy who had yearned for their approval for years wasn't me. I wasn't there to protect them from their poor choices. Standing on firm foundation that I had created for myself, I was me. I came to the realization that I no longer needed to flee the past as I turned to return inside to the life I had created without them. I had made it through that. And the best retaliation of all was survival, beautiful, quiet, and steadfast survival. You expect it to feel like a war when you walk away. You prepare for remorse, guilt, and second thoughts to gnaw at you through the night. However, none of that materialized. I only sensed silence. The excellent kind, not the acrid, harsh sort. It's like standing in a field after a storm and breathing clean air for the first time. For a long time, I believed that love required giving up something in order to give them more room. Giving till all that's left is the hope that they'll notice. However, true love doesn't urge you to vanish. Your dreams are not given to someone else and referred to your family. I had no obligation to explain myself to them. I had no obligation to give them another chance. Being free was something I owed to myself. And I made that precise decision. Listen carefully. You are not selfish for selecting yourself if you are reading this and you find yourself in my shoes, standing at that fork in the road, debating whether to remain faithful to those who wouldn't blink if you vanished. When you leave someone who only remembers your value in times of need, you are not being harsh. Because you grew weary of showing that you were worthy of love, you are not broken. Even if they never stated it, you are sufficient. Particularly if they didn't say it, and sometimes letting go of someone who made you question whether you ever earned it is the best act of self-love you can do. I didn't look for updates, but even when you don't ask for them, life has a weird way of delivering them to you. I learned that things at home had quickly fallen apart from an old neighbor a few months after that last contact. James's debts did not miraculously vanish after he left school. Dad had drained the college fund for him, and it was long since gone. What about the humiliation? None of them had anticipated how long it would remain. Dad's truck had to be sold. At the grocery store on the outskirts of town, Mom got a second job. James continued to believe that the world owed him something despite his repeated poor choices. They made an effort to keep the facade intact, but you can only cover up flaws for so long before the entire house falls apart. And me? I was too preoccupied with negotiating new contracts, sanding tables, and growing the small business into something substantial. Peace, no boasting, no retaliation. The world's sweetest sound. The things you notice when you're free are odd. It feels different in the mornings. Not heavy, not hurried, simply peaceful. The kind of silence that allows you to hear your own thoughts once more. I got a better rental. It was small but tidy, and there was a small piece of grass in back where I could sit and observe the passing scenery. Down the stairs, nobody was yelling. No insulting remarks during meals. Me, breathing, without regret. The company expanded more quickly than I had anticipated. Mostly word of mouth. After one consumer told a buddy, the friend would tell two more. Before long, I was earning actual money rather than just getting by. Enough to comfortably pay the bills, but nothing spectacular or worthy of a headline. Enough to begin saving? Enough to look forward to a future that seemed like mine at last. I began to attract regular customers who came for the person behind the furniture as well as the furniture itself. One afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Harris, a couple, came in to pick up a personalized table. After shaking my hand and grinning, they remarked, "You should be proud. You're building something real that matters." And that struck me more deeply than I had anticipated because, for the first time, I was viewed by someone as someone who mattered because of what he had chosen to become, not as a last resort or backup plan. I was no longer required to prove anything. Not even to myself, not to strangers, nor to my family. I was sufficient enough already. Everything they attempted to control over me, their love, their money, their approval, no longer owned me, not even the college fund or the hollow promises. It didn't. For a short while, they simply led me to believe it did. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks, which is funny. It doesn't come with a big budget movie scene when you scream into the heavens and throw your arms in the air. It's softer and quieter than that. You'll never let it go again, though, once it becomes ingrained in your bones. Freedom appears to be a leisurely Sunday morning. Sitting in a workshop that smells like sawdust and promise, drinking awful coffee from a chipped cup. The realization that you don't have to answer the phone just because someone asks you to is what it is. It's going into a store and purchasing a modest item for yourself that you want rather than need, without second-guessing yourself or feeling guilty about it. It's giggling. Without looking over your shoulder to see whether someone is about to interrupt, you're giggling uncontrollably. I began to make friends who were unaware of my past. Individuals who did not wear the outdated assumptions around their necks like chains. I had another dream. I'm breathing in front of you in a way that feels solid and possible, rather than the desperate way I used to, clutching to someday like a life raft. I had aspirations of purchasing my own building, growing the store and teaching other children, the ones that everyone had given up on, how to believe in themselves and create something with their hands. I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come, and I didn't even realize it at the time. I no longer required their presence. In actuality, those who loved you only when you were helpful to them were never truly your family in the first place. Family is more than just kinship. It's family. Even if they are just standing quietly in your corner, holding space for your goals, family is the one that cheers you on when no one else does. I have no idea what James is doing at the moment. I'm not sure whether Dad still sits in that old recliner and looks at the TV, acting as though he hasn't thrown away his true heritage. I'm not sure if Mom still looks at my vacant seat on holidays, wondering when I'll return and act as if nothing had happened. I don't care, to be honest. I now have a table and a seat of my own. And I don't see any of the things I built, friends, clients, and the serene calm of knowing I made the right decision, missing when I look around at my life. I simply see myself, at last, completely free. If I've learned anything, it's that you don't have to remain in an environment where you aren't respected. Love that ought to have been offered freely doesn't have to be earned by bleeding yourself dry. Sometimes just walking away and continuing to walk is the bravest thing you will ever do. I didn't have the life I had anticipated. I have something better. A life of mine. They will never touch the future. Something they will never comprehend. And that's sufficient.